DJ's Darkside. Tonight we're going to be reading from Deadly Treats, and this one is called Time of Death by David Housewright. A small brick building, 1 story high and less than 30 feet across, crouched in the middle of the block. It was the police station, although there was no sign that said so. A uniformed sergeant sat behind an old, battered desk. As far as Logan could tell, he was the only man in the station house. "Help ya?" the sergeant said. Logan flashed his ID. "Yeah, Chief said you'd be around," Sergeant said. "Come to look at our killer, did you?" "That's right. Pretty little thing. Hard to believe she'd slashed her boyfriend's throat. Of course, she denies it." "I bet she does," Logan said. "I gotta tell ya," the sergeant grunted as he lifted his enormous frame from the chair and circled the desk. "I expect you see this sort of thing all the time, but a small town like this one, I gotta tell you, it's the biggest thing ever happened here. Well, second biggest thing. I can understand why the chief would call you big city boys." The sergeant led Logan to the back of the building. There was a heavy metal door with a small window. The window was made of thick glass crisscrossed with iron threads. Logan looked through the glass. The girl was sitting on the edge of a narrow cot attached to the wall, her head in her hands. "There she is," the sergeant said. He fitted a key into the lock and gave it a turn. The door swung open. "Want I should stay?" "That won't be necessary," Logan said, "but I'm expecting a report from the medical examiner. Let me know when it gets here." "You got it." Logan stepped into the cell. The sergeant closed the door and locked him in. "Laurel Clark," Logan said. The girl looked up. Her eyes were swollen and her cheeks were puffy from crying. She wore her hair in a ponytail tied with a red ribbon, but the ribbon had become loose and Logan figured a firm head shake would send it flying. She rubbed her eyes with the back of her hands and looked up again. Logan decided that there was something extraordinarily touching about her, but quickly pushed the thought from his mind. "You know better than that," he told himself. He let her look at his badge and identification. "My name's Logan. I'm with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension." "It's all my fault," she said. "Miss Clark, have you been informed of your rights?" She said that she had, but he read them to her again anyway. He asked how old she was. 19, she said, which made her a legal adult, which meant he did not have to inform her parents before questioning her. If she had said she was 16, Logan would have believed her. "Will you answer some questions for me?" he asked. "Sure." "You don't have to. If you want an attorney, it's okay." "I read the report. It's an amazing story." "You don't believe me either." "The report says you had a motive for killing your boyfriend." "Ex-boyfriend. Witnesses say that you were the one who coerced him into the house where he was killed?" "Yes." "You admitted to the police that you were responsible for your boyfriend's death." "Ex-boyfriend. Tommy was my ex-boyfriend, and I said I was responsible. I didn't say I actually killed him." "Where were you when he was killed?" "I was at home in my bed." "Any witnesses?" "At 2:15 a.m.? Laurel smiled slightly. "No, there weren't any witnesses." "In what way were you responsible for your ex-boyfriend's death?" "You said you read the report. I'd like to hear the story in your own words." Laurel sighed deeply and rubbed her eyes again. Do you believe in ghosts, Mr. Logan? No. I do. I believe in ghosts. I didn't believe until last night, but I believe now. Tell me about it. There's a farmhouse out on the country road about 10 miles from town. The old Utney place. The place where Tommy's body was found, Logan said. Laurel nodded. She was 10 when Dolores Utley died, and even now it was hard to take. Dolores had been the girl Laurel had most looked up to, had most wanted to be like. She was smart, and she was lovely, and she could dance. Dolores was the best dancer in Miss Cummings' dance school. Laurel had gone to all of her recitals, and because Dolores danced, Laurel wanted to dance. But more important, Dolores always treated Laurel like an equal, like a friend. She never said, "This is the kid I sometimes babysit." Instead, Dolores would give her a hug or slap her hand in greeting and tell her high school classmates, "Meet my friend, Laurel." And then she died. The day after Halloween, they found her in the Utley home, hanging from a rope she had tied herself. At her feet was her boyfriend, his throat slashed so deeply that his head hung backwards like the hood of a sweatshirt. According to local gossip, the boyfriend had convinced Dolores that he loved her, taken her virginity, and then discarded her. She begged him to come back. He not only refused, he flaunted his new girlfriend in front of her. The police called it murder-suicide, although they never did find the weapon that killed the boy. The Utleys moved away from the house, and it had remained vacant all those years. Rumors circulated that it was haunted. Laurel never believed the rumors, yet she could not pass the abandoned house without feeling unbearably sad. Her childhood friend Tommy, however, did believe the rumors. He even claimed to have seen a young woman dressed in white passing before the windows late at night on a number of occasions. Once, when he mustered enough courage to investigate, he said that he came close enough to the window to hear Dolores weeping over her lost love. But then he laughed, and no one ever knew if he was serious or not. By the time they were seniors in high school, Laurel and Tommy had stopped being friends and had become something so much more. Laurel still didn't know how it happened, how they had evolved from boy and girl playing in the backyard to man and woman playing in the bedroom, but she remembered one incident in particular that occurred early in their new relationship. "Remember Dolores Utley?" Tommy had asked her. They were naked in Tommy's bedroom, the house empty except for them. "Of course. She was always looking out for you when we were kids. It was understood if you mess with Laurel, you answer to Dolores." "I remember. After we started dating, she came to me in a dream. She said I should be good to you or else." "Or else what?" "She didn't say, but I remember what happened to her boyfriend." Laurel thought it was a wonderful lie and poked Tommy in the ribs. "Don't do that," Tommy said. He rolled out of bed and stared down at her. Sweat beaded on his forehead and his body seemed to tremble. "I'm not kidding. She came to me in a dream. More than one dream. She was serious." It was then that Laurel knew. Tommy really was afraid of ghosts, especially the ghost of Dolores Utley. "Be nice to me then," she said. Only Tommy hadn't been nice to her. He professed his undying love for Laurel the night they first made love, and then again the night before she left for college in September. But by the time she returned home for Halloween, he was sleeping with Tiffany Brent, who was still in high school. Laurel was stunned by this development and reminded him that he was the only man she had known. He responded by asking how long he was supposed to wait for her. "More than 8 weeks, she told him. The day after Halloween, there was a party, beer, and a bonfire at the lake. All the kids home from college and those who had stayed in the little town were there. Tommy told stories, as he always did, while Tiffany stared adoringly at him. "Tommy's afraid of ghosts," Laurel said. That caused several heads to turn. "I mean it. He's terrified of Dolores Utley. He claims she comes to him in his dreams. Isn't that right, Tommy?" "You're crazy," Tommy said. "How about it, Tiff?" Laurel said. "Has Tommy ever mentioned his fear of ghosts to you?" Tiffany did the worst thing she could have done to her man. She looked him in the eye and said, "Is it true?" After that, Laurel didn't have to add much to the conversation to keep it going in the direction that she wanted. Eventually, Tommy agreed to spend an entire night in the Utley house, if that was what it would take to prove his manhood. He was quite surprised when Laurel jumped up and announced, "No time like the present." "Now?" he said. As someone correctly noted, it was 10 years to the day that Dolores had killed her boyfriend and hung herself. Right now. Tommy's fear of being ridiculed was far greater than his fear of the grisly anniversary. He allowed Laurel and a dozen friends to escort him to the house, where he bravely kissed Tiffany goodbye, said, "See you in hell," to the cheering crowd, and entered the house. Most of the kids lingered to see if he tried to escape. A few tossed rocks on the roof and raked tree branches along the walls. They could hear Tommy shouting from inside, "Real funny, guys." After an hour or so, everyone left. Early the next morning, Tiffany went to the house to see if Tommy was still there or if he had gone home after the crowd dissipated. She found him, dead, his throat slashed, under the beam where Dolores Utley had hung herself a decade earlier. Shortly after, the police had questioned Laurel. "I wanted Dolores to kill him," she said. "I was desperate for her to kill him, but I never believed she really would." Laurel covered her face with her hands. "What have I done?" Logan watched her intently as he leaned against the wall, his arms folded across his chest. He didn't believe her story. His gut and 20 years of experience convinced him that Laurel killed Tommy and set it up so that the more gullible would blame Dolores Utley. Only he couldn't prove it. The preliminary report he had read earlier said that the crime scene investigators were unable to find the murder weapon, just as they had been unable to locate it in the first killing. Nor could they uncover a shred of evidence to suggest that anyone had been in the Utley house except for Tommy. The case was so weak, Logan was sure if Laurel had asked for an attorney when one had been offered, he would have screamed for her to release long before now, and she would have gotten it. Laurel looked up at Logan, studied his expression. "What will they do to me?" she said. Logan had no answer. Even if the county attorney believed that the girl had deliberately manipulated Tommy into the house so that Dolores would kill him, God, now he was considering the possibility. What could he do about it? Charge Laurel with conspiracy to commit murder? Call Dolores to the stand as a corroborating witness? The sergeant rapped on the cell door. "Medical examiner's report just arrived," he said. Logan excused himself and left the cell. He returned to the front desk and started reading the findings of the officer of the county coroner. The sergeant glanced at the report over his shoulder. "So," he said, "did you hear the girl's story?" "I heard it." "What do you think? Do you believe in ghosts did it?" "Do you?" "You gotta admit, it would certainly make for a novel defense should the matter ever go to trial. Think we get on court TV?" Logan smiled. He held the report up for the sergeant to see and pointed at the line that read date and time of death. "I don't believe in ghosts," he said. "Do you want to know what I believe in? I believe in forensic pathology." A minute later, Logan was back in the cell, standing before the girl. "Miss Clark, I would like to clarify something you said earlier," he said. "Certainly." I asked where you were when Tommy was killed. I said I was in bed. I asked if there were any witnesses. I said there weren't any. No, you said at 2:15 a.m. there weren't any witnesses. So, Logan held up the coroner's report. He was smiling broadly. How did you know that's when Tommy was killed? Laurel didn't hesitate for a moment. Because, Mr. Logan, 2:15, that's the exact same time when Dolores Utley killed her boyfriend 10 years ago. I hope you enjoyed.